Hey, everybody, happy Sunday. Are we ready for fall? Is it just me? I'm loving these easy breezy days. I am your host of today's episode of Black Civics Collective, the Black Civics Collective, brought to you by the National Association of American Slavery Descendants. And I am Friday Jones, your one and only host. And I'm so excited. If you all will remember, that the last time we tried to have Jasmyne Cannick on with us, she actually fell ill and she wasn't able to be present. So I'm so grateful that she's able to join us today. And so with that, okay, we got to be talking about the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. That is like the hot topic of the day. FEMA and FEMA's response typically during disaster, even insurance companies' response during disaster. Typically, our Black folks down south and in these hazard areas are usually like the last served. There's not a lot of diversity in FEMA. And with, I think, the presidential announcement of only $750 going out to people, this is going to be really an interesting time of recovery. And with that, if you will go to my social media, actually my ex Twitter, at I am Friday Jones, there is a fundraiser for the folks down in Asheville, North Carolina. This fundraiser is actually being sponsored by Rob Thomas. Rob Thomas was one of the advocates, just like me, down in Asheville that was really partially responsible for the reparations task force in Asheville being formed. He is the person who is one of the members of the stakeholder group down there in Asheville, and he keeps us informed about what is going on in Asheville. And so if you can, please make sure you go to their GoFundMe. We'll drop a link a little later bit in the show, but I did want to make sure that you all knew that was actually happening and that was going on. And so outside of that, I know there's some sports action for the sports people. I'm not the person in front of games on Sunday, but I definitely do know that last week, New York, my uncle would be very proud of the New Yorkers because they kind of came through in a pinch. And no one here in Southern California seemed to care. But shout out to my Uncle Mike because his team apparently made the cut last week. And with that, today's show, we want to still focus on what is happening with the Democratic Party. We want to focus on some of the local races here and expand the conversation with Jasmyne with regards to the national landscape and what is happening with Kamala Harris and what the backlash of Gavin Newsom's reaction to reparations bills, what kind of impact will it have on the national reparations movement. There were some conversations down in South Carolina with GOP candidates, Black GOP candidates who actually just said they wanted to move on from the conversation of reparations because there has been too much intermarriage and intermingling. And the interesting thing to me about that is no one says to like ethnic Europeans, whether they're Irish, French, Italian, from the UK, no one says to them, well, we don't know how to find slave owning families because, you ethnic Europeans, you continue to marry each other. And because you continue to marry each other, we don't know where you are now. Like, that is so not a thing. No one says that anywhere at any time. And I thought that reaction was just like really, really callous. And I was really glad that Marcel Dixon was there to kind of set the record straight with that GOP candidate. It's important that we really show up in spaces and counter some of the narratives that are happening with regards to reparations. And if you have not been staying abreast of what was happening here in California, the California Legislative Black Caucus actually put out messaging from LA Sentinel, LA Times, you name it, wherever they could get airtime. They basically were trying to blame Senator Bradford for going along independently on his bills, despite the fact that there was a news journalist that leaked a letter from the CLBC on their letterhead to Gavin Newsom dating back to May of 2024, where basically they said, hey, we're going to adopt Senator Bradford's agency and his $12 million funding source into our package of reparations. And somewhere between May and August 31st of this year, it seems like they cut Senator Bradford loose, but they were publicly blaming Senator Bradford for drafting the bills independently, despite the fact that they put the May 5th letter to the governor, and despite the fact that they ultimately co-sponsored those bills on the assembly side of passage. But the California Black Legislative Caucus, led by Assemblywoman Lori Wilson, turned around and blamed the activists. They blamed us and basically said we didn't do a good enough job. I think taking legislation completely through the Senate and champion and whipping votes is something to be applauded, not something to be blamed. And then not only did we get through appropriations on the Senate side, we also, as advocates, were able to move that bill through the Assembly side also, and the Assembly side through their appropriations. And so all of these Congressional Legislative Black Caucus members had to do was to bring those bills to the floor. They also tried to blame Republican Assembly member Bilal Aseli. They tried to blame him because he historically has not been in favor for things like affirmative action. However, he felt that it was important for the bills to at least have a vote. And in his attempt to bring the bills to the floor, if you have seen the video, it was Isaac Bryant that stopped that from happening. And so the truth is that the CLBC failed to pass groundbreaking reparations for California. And at this point, there's a cry to simply vote them out. We, I guess, want to put that to the public to consider voting them out and whether or not we should. And with that, as we try to get, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Jasmyne Cannick, but while we get her up, we're going to run a short video. And so just bear with us as we sort of transition into getting our guests through the doors. Thank you so much.
Welcome. We are the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. Our mission is to advance the national movement for reparations. The United States Office of Management and Budget set 5 minimum standards for collecting racial data. The Black race is defined as a person having origin in any of the Black racial categories of Africa. NAASD has recommended that the OMB disaggregate data to accomplish 3 goals: decouple race from ethnicity, create an ethnic term that exclusively identifies descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, and create an ethnic term that preserves the American freedmen political status. The ethnogenesis of the African American identity is a result of ethnocide. The identity is from a people with shared history. Race, identity plus ethnic identity equals peoplehood. Together, we can fix this dilemma with the OMB. We can build a coalition, grow the movement, and create a unified demand. What can you do to get involved? You can join NAASD today at www.naasd.org. You can email the OMB using our toolkit, or you can donate to NAASD so that we can continue this work. Thank you for your time, and stay connected with us on social media at NAASDORG. We are on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also sign up for our newsletter at www.naasd.org.
It looks like we have to transition because we, yet again, do not have Jasmyne Cannick. And so gives me an opportunity to do a pop-up. And because we're in voting season, I'm going to transition right on into reading this Supreme Court State of Kansas League of Women Voters versus, I'm sorry, it's actually three. Let me get all of the appellates. It's the League of Women Voters of Kansas, Loud Light Kansas, Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, Inc., and Topeka Independent Living Resources Center versus Scott Schwab in his office capacity as Kansas Secretary of State, and Chris Kobach in his official capacity as Kansas State Attorney General. Basically, this case was about voting rights in the state of Kansas. As we are in voting season and there is debate that we see amongst folks on whether or not people should have IDs or be required to have IDs. This particular case had some ramifications just in terms of who had the right to vote. There are also a lot of advertisements that are happening right now, and those advertisements are talking about some undocumented people essentially being given the opportunity to vote while seeking benefits. And so when people go in to seek benefits, you know, even if there's a state that they are in where they otherwise would not be allowed to vote, there really is no enforcement, if you will. And so as we enter November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th, as the day to vote, this actually might be a good case for us to read since we do not have a guest today. So syllabus by the court. The scope of KSA 252438A extends to protected speech because its prohibition extended because its prohibitions extend to speech that is not fraudulent or deceptive. The right to vote is not an unenumerated natural right protected by Section 1 of the Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights. So basically, they're saying the right to vote is not a natural right in their argument. Section 2 of the Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights declares the foundational political principle of delegated power from the people to their free government. This principle informs the entire edifice of lawmaking in a free society. The Constitution itself is the originating act of delegation of power from the people to their free government. And the Constitution makes provisions for ongoing, perpetual, secondary acts of delegation. The Constitution creates the offices of free governments, that is, the seats of delegated power largely contained in the three great departments of executive, legislative, and judicial branches. And that's a mini civil, civics course right there. The three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And it provides mechanisms by which the people continue to delegate their power to officers who will from time to time occupy the constitutional offices. The Kansas Constitution contemplates achieving Section 2's ongoing and perpetual delegation of power through varied mechanisms, including popular elections, limited elections, appointments, and succession. Section 2 of the Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights does not address itself to these mechanisms of delegation. To find the controlling law of popular elections, we must look instead to the specific provisions in Articles 4 and 5 of Kansas's Constitution. The right to suffrage is an enumerated political right by Article 5 of the Kansas Constitution. As an expressly enumerated right, Article 5 provides the strongest possible constitutional protections. The legislature violates the Kansas Constitution's Article 5 right of suffrage, meaning a right to be a qualified elector in any election called by the state or its political subdivisions. If it imposes any extra constitutional qualifications to the precisely defined right to suffrage. Article 5 of the Kansas Constitution requires the legislature to pass such laws as may be necessary for ascertaining by proper proofs the citizens who shall be entitled to the rights of suffrage. The proper proofs contemplated by Article 5, Section 4 may include any reasonable provisions for ascertaining who is entitled to vote. And that's what this case is about. Who exactly is entitled to vote? That is, who is a qualified elector under Article 5 of Kansas's Constitution. To prevail on a claim that that Article 5 right to suffrage under the Kansas Constitution has been violated, a plaintiff must show that the legislature has imposed what amounts to a new extra constitutional qualification on the right to be an elector. If a law violates the Article 5 right to suffrage, it is unconstitutional. So basically, there's a new extra constitutional qualification to the right. That's what's being argued here. Simply because a law does not violate Article 5 of the Kansas Constitution does not mean that any regime of proper proofs is permissible. In designing a process of providing proper proofs, the legislature still must comply with other constitutional guarantees, such as those of equal protection and due process. So basically, we have this idea of a new extra constitutional qualification going up against equal protection and due process. To comply with the due process, any proper proofs devised by the legislature must include reasonable notice to the voter and an opportunity to contest the disqualification of otherwise valid absentee ballots and no cure deficiencies. To comply with equal protections, any proper proofs devised by the legislature must be capable of being applied with reasonable uniformity upon objective standards. KSA 2023 Supplemental 25s, limitation on the number of advanced ballots that may be delivered by one person can in no way be characterized and as an added qualification on the right to be an elector. I mean, that would literally mean that the U.S. mail couldn't do its job. Restrictions on the number of advanced ballots one person may deliver does not in isolation inhibit speech because delivering ballots is not speech or expressive conduct. Review of the judgment of the Court of Appeals from Shawnee District Court, Teresa L. Watson, oral arguments held February 20th of 2024 and opinions filed May 31st of 2024. Judgment of the Court of Appeals reversing the district court is affirmed in part and reversed in part. Judgment to the district court is affirmed in part and reversed in part, and the case is remanded with directions. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of these people and kind of what happened and how they got here. Elizabeth C. Frost, pro hoc vice of Elias Law Group LLP of Washington, D.C., argued that the cause and Henry J. Brewster, all of these different attorneys, okay, all of these people argued and were with her on the briefs, okay? Bradley Schlossman, we're again going through all of the different attorneys, Solicitor General Derek Schmidt, Jeffrey Coleman of Watkins, so on and so forth, did an amica with Judicial Watch Incorporated and the Allied Educational Foundation. So these are all the different people, all the different people, all the different people. The opinion of the court was delivered by Stigall J. in 2021. Several voting advocacy organizations and individuals filed suit against 3 new Kansas election laws, alleging that those laws violated various provisions of the Kansas Constitution. The law at issue prohibited the false representation of an election official, prohibit election officials from counting advance ballots that do not have a signature or have signatures have a signature that an election official determines does not match the signature on file, and prohibit any person from collecting and returning more than 10 advance ballots for other voters. So in California, you actually have to sign your ballot. If you sign it and you're not in front of a poll, it has to also be signed by a witness before it's mailed, okay? The ensuing, this is in Kansas though, but I'm just telling you how mail-in ballots happen here. I'm not from Kansas, so I can't tell you how it happens there. The ensuing litigation resulted in multiple appeals, which have now been consolidated. Though consolidated, this appeal now includes 2 distinct procedural postures. The false representation provision is postured at the temporary injunction stage, while the other 2 laws are postured at the motion to dismiss. We recite procedural history at great length below. I want to skip some of the great length below, but I do want to, usually the beginnings and the endings are almost where we need to be, but we hold that the signature verification requirement is a valid effort by the legislature to provide proper proofs of the right to be qualified elector, meaning adding your signature, they basically say, hey, we don't disagree with that law, but we remand to the district court to consider whether a statute and its implementing regulations comply with constitutional guarantees of equal protections and due process. Okay, so that's why they said that they split it. Finally, we affirm that the district court's grant of the defendant's motion to dismiss on the claim that the ballot collection restriction is constitutionally infirm because the restriction is not a new qualification on the right to be an elector, and because the prescribed activity, the delivery of the ballots, is not political speech or conduct. So this gets to, again, them trying to limit that a person can only deliver 10 ballots at a time. And that's really where they're having a problem, because historically, to be an elector, you had to sign something if you were an elector. And so electors are those of us that vote. Okay, so let's give some facts and procedural background. This thing is 96 pages. We are not going to get through it all today. But as much of it as we can get through, we will. And if I can sort of skip around a little bit, I will. In 2021, the Kansas legislature passed Senate substitute for House Bill 2183 over the governor's veto. So that means they had a supermajority, unlike here in California with our coward CLBC, who didn't want to challenge the land return bill, which can be challenged by a supermajority of the assembly. Just throwing that out there. The bill created 3 election laws commonly referred to in this case as false representation provision, the signature verification requirement, and the ballot collection restriction. So those were the 3 things: false representation, a signature verification, and a ballot collection restriction. The plaintiffs challenged 2 subsections of the false representation provision, which criminalizes knowingly engaging in any of the following conduct by phone, mail, email, website, or other online activity, other means of communication while not holding a position of an elected official, engaging in conduct that gives the appearance of being an elected official, engaging in conduct that would cause another person to believe that a person is an elected official. And so with that, if you remember what this case was about, this case was totally about mail-in ballots, who could have bins around Kansas, how the bins could be collected. In California, we have bins, but those bins are labeled and property of the Secretary of State. And so this is regarding third parties. Our guest has joined us, Jasmyne Cannick, so I can switch gears here. We're going to stop the reading here, but I'm going to do another, what do you call those, pop-up? I'll do another pop-up to pick this up because, again, going into November 5th, I think it's really important that we understand what happened in Kansas, what happened with the concept of mail-in ballots, if it's legal, constitutional, and all these things. California automatically sends you a mail-in ballot, and our collection rate, I believe, is about 50 or 60%. Due to that change, because people are busy. It's easier to drop something in the mail than it is to sometimes stand online. And it is a very accurate system because they tell you when they're sending the ballot to you, and they tell you should expect it within 7 days. If you don't have it in 7 days, you should be contacting them. And then once you mail it, they tell you when it has been received and when it's officially been counted. So you get 3 touches here in California, and we'll continue with Kansas when we have another minute. And so I'm not going to hold this up too much more. I have been dying to talk to Jasmyne Cannick. I'm so glad she is in studio with us today. And so she has a lot, y'all. She got a resume. She got a bio. She can do 10, 15 plates in the air at one time. I think she's almost,
really.
Almost like she's got some fairy dust, or she's got some magic that she sprinkles from time to time, because I don't know how, honestly, she gets all the things done that she does, despite the fact she faced hurdles from emancipation from the foster care system in the 1990s at the age of 17 and lacking access to college education. Jasmyne Cannick managed to carve out a meaningful path for herself, fueled by her experience and desire to not become a statistic. She pursued alternative avenues for personal and professional growth and took advantage of many opportunities that were granted to her. And today, Ms. Cannick is a Hip Hop Generation award-winning journalist, a veteran Democratic political strategist, and a constant advocate for the underrepresented, marginalized community. She is the voice. She is the strategist. Advocate. She is absolutely 100% the creative, and her collaborations and credits just go on and on and on. But we want to take a quick deep dive. Thank you, Jasmyne Cannick, so much for being here with the Black Civics Collective today.
Hey. Thank you for having me. Sorry I'm late. We just had a little mix up there, but I'm here.
I am so glad you are here.
It's Sunday, so we gonna call this Makeup Free Sunday. This is
you are girl.
This is Makeup Free in my house clothes Sunday, but it's all good because I don't know if you saw that post I made earlier this week, just about,
I did, and that's why
right.
I
Yes, that's our life right now for the next 30 days, right? And so we do what we can, and we will sleep on November 6th. And when folks see us out, we may not be as spiffy as we normally are, because we juggling a million different things right now, trying to get things done. And that post was from the heart, girl. That post,
I felt it. I was like,
that
ooh,
post was from the heart, because we don't talk about that. And what I mean, audience, is we don't talk about the work that goes behind the candidate, the work that goes behind the news, the work that goes behind all this stuff in politics, from your candidate to your volunteer, to your strategist, to the folks who are reporting on the election, to the folks who are working the election, to people who are knocking on your doors, to people who are putting the mail together that shows up in your mailbox. Just all of us are working almost 24 hours a day for the next 30 days until election day. And what made me do the post was because so many of my friends in my circle, we all are like, right? And then we got people in our homes, right, who don't necessarily always get it and understand. And it's like, y'all got to give us grace for the next 30 days. Especially for the people who are on campaigns on the opposite side of me, because come November 6th, you're going to need to console them. You are going to need to help them if they lose. So it's like, but no, all jokes aside, like, no, yeah, it's like, it's a thing, and we don't really talk about it. And it's like, we take on, like, I know me personally, I've taken on like all this work because we got to work, and we do it because we're passionate about it, right? And it's just but it is like tax season. There's a deadline. There's a date, right? That date is 8 o'clock on November 5th, and it's just crazy. And now that ballots are dropping, I tell people all the time.
I got my text.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, the election starts when the ballots drop. The election ends at 8 o'clock on November 5th. It's not, we just vote on November 5th. Folks are starting to vote now, which is why people have started getting those text messages early from candidates. And, I already got a mail pile this thick, on my entryway table. Now, see, I'm a nerd. I collect political mail because, as a strategist, I like to see who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong.
I do the same thing.
Right.
Okay, I'm not alone. You are not alone.
Yes. And I get ideas. I get ideas from people's mail, right? And so
that's a tip. Wait. Let's unpack that. That is like a pro tip for people who think they might want to run for office. Say it again. You got to collect the other people's mailers.
Collect the mail, yes. Read it. Analyze it. Look at it, figure out, do you like it? Is it too old-fashioned? Do you like the photos that were used? Do you like the way the text was? This is me as a designer, right? Do I like the way the text was laid out? And then the other part of me also looks at political mail because, oops, hold on. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly.
Okay, because I was hearing my music in my ear for a minute there. I was like, wait, headphones, wait. The other thing I look at as a voter is who's paying for that mail, right? If it's a hit piece, I want to look at the bottom and see paid for by, right? And I want to look at who are the three, the three highest paying contributors into that political action committee independent expenditure. So I look at mail for a host of different reasons. Now, I may not always look at it when it comes, because I'm not one of those voters who don't know what's going on. So I don't really need your mail, because I've already made up my mind who I'm voting for, because I've kept up with stuff for the entire 4-year cycle. I'm not just tuning in for the last 2 months of it, right?
Yes, so, and hold on. From my Angelinos, they should know that you publish your very own recommendations on ballot measures. Look, Jasmine is almost like what is it? The League of Black Women Voters. They put out their voter guide.
The
Jasmine
League
has
of
her
Women
own
Voters. We wish we had a Black Women Voters League.
Let me talk it into fruition. Let me talk it into happening. But you have your own. So you folks, she lives by this.
I do, and that's on my to-do list for this week. There's so much going on. But yeah, so I going back to the mail for just 1 second. So I'll put the mail to the side. I'll let it pile up. And then after the election, yeah, I go back and look at things and see what I liked or what I didn't like, and make notes to myself, save certain pieces. Let me tell you something else. The other reason I do this, because that mail represents a gazillion dollars, right? That mail represents jobs. That mail represents our contributions to candidates, right? Because I give to candidates. I put my money where my values are, right? And so those are all the things that go through my head when I look at mail. Okay, this person raised enough money to be able to mail out to the district, right?
When they get beyond the door hangers and it's like the 4-page, the 4-page fold, I'm like, oh, they got good money.
And that could be a good or a bad thing, right? Because sometimes then we're saying, well, who's funding that mail if we know it's like a candidate who's, let's say, a Republican or not necessarily for the people, right? So it's all these different reasons to look at your mail. And that's what I do. I have a pile. It's about this big right now. I got a couple pieces over the weekend. I imagine this week it's going to go crazy with political mail. But this is the life that I live and you live and that we've chosen, right? I do put out my voter guide. I plan on putting my voter guide out, fingers crossed, this week. Okay. There's just so much going on. I gotta, believe it or not, girl, tomorrow I gotta go sit in court because Ed Buck's criminal appeal is being heard before the Ninth Circuit tomorrow. And for those who don't know who Ed Buck is, the short and dirty of it is he was a white man in West Hollywood who was very wealthy, very connected to the Democratic Party and Democrats. And at the same time, he was also using dating, a gay dating app and other avenues to find homeless Black men. Most of them were gay, and shooting them up with meth. And 2 of them died in his apartment. 1 almost died. And I say that very, I always say that we know of, because he had been doing this for so long. I'm sure there are other survivors, other victims that we don't know about, but he did get convicted finally in 2021.
And it was large. I do feel like it was due to the coverage that you had, and the fact that he is appealing.
We always knew he was, right after he got the 30-year sentence, and this is federal time, so that means he got to do 80% of it, 85% of it.
4 years.
He filed the appeal, so we always knew. But this ain't Law and Order. This is not Law and Order. Things don't get wrapped up with a bow with 48 minutes and 12 minutes of commercials. And so 2 years later, a little over 2 years later, because he was convicted in 2021, not sentenced until 2022, and that was April 2022. So it's October 2024, and now he's trying to get out. So his appeal is going to be heard on Monday. And, I didn't miss a day of that trial. I don't plan on, as far as I know, the courtroom is open to anyone who wants to sit in it. So I'm going to go and sit.
All of the people who haven't, this is as much as I'm going to talk about Sean Puffy Combs, but for those that have an appetite, Ed Buck is like part of that world. And if you want to tune in to his appeal to sort of see how the law plays out with these kinds of crimes, these sex crimes, that in this case has actual murder charges attached to it, this is a time you can attend court or follow Jasmyne on social media, because I know you're going to write about it. I know you're going to write about it.
I'm going to try to. That's the problem with this, again, being in the middle of election season. Like, I'm totally, like, for some reason, people have this like misconception about me, like I'm independently wealthy or something, and I don't have nothing better to do but sit around in courtrooms and just, you know, write all my thoughts every day I have on life all over social media. I don't get to do that. I have to work like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, you know, this is my heaviest time of the year because it's the election season time. So I will do my very best. It's federal court. They can log on online. And just because I know that Ed Buck's lawyers like to troll me and use things that I say in motions that they file in court, let me just clear something up. No murder charges, girl. He was charged with providing the methamphetamine that caused the deaths of Jamel.
He was charged with being a drug dealer.
And so technically, and he was found guilty. And he had 7 other charges he was found guilty of 7 more charges as well, 9 altogether. Unfortunately, murder wasn't one of the charges, or else he could have been and probably would have been sentenced he could have been eligible for life in prison, right? And so he got 30 years. And folks, just so you know, the man is like 60-something years old, has been doing meth for God knows how many years, is HIV positive, has always been open about his status. He's you know, he was, I don't know what he is today, an AIDS activist. So let's just say 30 years could be a lot in his world, okay?
Well, yeah,
given the status of his body.
Things. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Google that picture of him and see what he looked like 2 days after his
if you had told me he was 80, court. I would believe you. I almost don't believe he's 60, not based on those photos.
He's 60 something. I think now he's like 66 or something. But when people look at that picture of him in criminal court when he was being arraigned, he looks like he's literally coming down off of drugs, because he was coming off of drugs, and it showed
on his face.
But yeah, so I got that going on in addition to everything else. So, but that's really important. That's super important. We want him to stay.
We want him to stay in jail.
Prison.
He needs to stay in jail.
Stay in prison. Yeah,
100%. So I gotta ask you a couple of questions, right? And we don't have as much time as I would like for us to have, but you know, I'm mad at the CLBC right now. We've talked about it offline. I talked about it a little bit before you came into the studio. And, you know, Isaac and I have talked about this because he's also from foster care system, right? And he's done some really beautiful legislation in that space. He had the bill that stops, you know, counties from taking foster care kids benefits. And if you know the numbers here in California, you know, Latino kids outnumber us, but they also outnumber us in the population. But based on our population, we are overrepresented in foster care. And, you know, to be in conflict with him over reparations is not an easy position to be in. And the same, I think Corey Jackson is not, he was just, you know, single mom, household with single mom, but he wrote, you know, a bill for mental health and welfare so that foster children are not, you know, put into harmful environments. And those are good things, right? Those are the things we want our legislators to do. Those are the things we want our legislators to do. We can say, yes, we get behind you. Yes, this is good stuff. Yes, it's going to overwhelmingly, you know, hopefully protect our kids in particular a little more, so that their Social Security money that they're entitled to is there for them and not depleted, you know, before their 18th birthday. So this is legislation. As an advocate, as a reparationist, I'd be like, yes. And then I got to reconcile it with them stepping on Senator Bradford's bills. And you've seen enough of the news coverage. I hope. I'm hoping you've seen enough of the coverage. And so I've got to ask you, you know, when it comes to these two in particular, because they wrote this beautiful legislation, or Lola Smallwood or Tina McKenna, Bonta Mia is in her own pile of hot water, she and her husband together, so that's a whole other animal. I don't even want to get into their mess. But when you have people who do the good work, how do you stack it up? Because November is coming.
It's like winter is coming.
Coming.
For those of us who love that show, right? And I'm one of those people. But
Me too.
Here's the thing. The perfect lawmaker, the perfect legislator doesn't exist.
Fair.
When people come to government and politics, they bring the issues that matter the most to them. And a lot of times when we do that, we prioritize that issue over everything else. So we'll, even if someone did good on a whole bunch of other stuff, if they didn't do good on that, or, exceed on that issue that we think is the most important, or that person thinks is the most important, then we're ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I tell folks all the time when I'm going around doing my civic engagement speeches, one of my favorite things to say is that these are not positions for life, and that if folks are unhappy, then they should run for office themselves or support other folks. That's just the bottom line. But I think we really do have to figure out for ourselves. Each voter has to figure out for themselves. Like, yes, this issue is important. Is it most important above all other issues? Is it so important that anything else this group or this collective or this person may have done that was great is going to be overshadowed by their perceived failure on this? And I think that's what folks need to figure out. And I don't think the answer is going to be the same for everyone, right? Because just historically as a whole, we can't even figure out what to call ourselves as Black people. Some people want to be called African American. Some people want to be called the N-word straight up. Some people are okay with Black. Other folks are not okay with Black. Like, we can't even decide on what to call ourselves, much less what we want in a reparations package. Do we even want reparations? Like, we're just so divided on this issue, and not enough of us pay attention year round to what's going on in Sacramento, which is why we have folks like you and folks like me who try to educate folks. And, I do my whole know your zip code thing all year round, because
Yes.
I believe that if you know what's going on in DC, you should damn sure know what's going on in your zip code.
Right.
So, that's my thing. So I hear you, and I hear your frustration and everything. But that's like how I look at it. So just even me as a voter, if I took every other title, everything else off, I have to figure out for myself, like, what's most important for me, right? And as a voter, and I struggle with this all the time. And when I say struggle, I mean, it's just something that I have to remind myself to think about all the time, is that when I vote, I try not to vote for me. I try not to make it about me. I try to think about my community. So like that t-shirt that I just ordered that I love seeing folks wear that says, it's about, basically like your vote is for her, and her. Like, I tried to have that sort of attitude about things. Even when I put my voter guide and stuff together, it's like, okay, Jasmine, you're just one person, but, I'm thinking about not the people who are politically engaged, not the people who are watching CNN and MSNBC. I'm thinking about my brothers and sisters, my parking lot kings and queens. I'm thinking about all the folks that are not voting, are not going to vote. The folks who still think that Eric Garcetti is the mayor of Los Angeles because they're just that tuned out of what is going on in the city of LA.
Yeah.
Like, I try to think about those Black folks, right? And when I think about them, and I look at the issue, whatever the issue is before me, I try to vote for stuff I try to vote for and support things that I feel like are going to lift up our entire community. Do I get frustrated and upset with folks? Absolutely. Not only do I have to work with them, I live in their districts. I'm a delegate in the Democratic Party.
And congratulations.
Thank you. This is my second time around.
53rd district, I think, 55th.
If I'm correct.
55th
I know.
district.
I'm in Isaac's district. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I knew that. I did know that.
So it's just it's for me also a delicate tightrope dance as well. But I think one thing folks do know about me is that like I am gonna just be me. Like that's why I don't get far in the Democratic Party, because they can't tell me how to vote and tell me what to do and expect me to be like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't get on committees and things. I don't get appointed to things and stuff like that, because
I don't know if I'm going to get appointed to anything else after Eric Garcetti appointed me to this Reparations Advisory Commission. But from what you say, I can respect it and I hear you. I do think within our own community, there is a disconnect from what people consider reparations and what reparations is and can be. Right. And so as a reparationist, I'm forward thinking 6-7 generations down the line. Are we building something that can really last the test of time in terms of 7 generations? And I'm also, for me, everything from education, environmental protections, foster care protections, housing, medical care, all of those things to me fall under the umbrella, because that's where all the harms were done. Right. And so there's no disconnection from any issue that we have that's somehow not in a way tied to reparations. And even if we were going to have an immigration conversation, I'm going to take it back to Reconstruction and the 26 million ethnic Europeans that were immigrated here to cut out our voting power to begin with. Right. So to me, all trails lead back. But I know most people don't think about it in that way.
No, they don't. And I mean, I even find myself sitting down once this conversation around reparations got started, just me, Jasmine, I thought, like, what would reparations look like for you? Like, what does it mean for me? And for me, home ownership and education. That's to me what I think reparations looks like. For me, and I think for many other people in my generation who feel the same way. Property that could be passed down, property that is also housing. So that means we get to stay in our neighborhoods, stay in our cities, stay in our state, right? Because I do feel like this is an anti-Black state. I feel like it's an anti-Black city, especially as long as Kevin De Leon is on that city council.
That part.
That was a plug for it's time to go, Kevin. And then education, because as you were reading from my bio earlier, look, it took me years to feel comfortable enough to have that included in my bio. When I sat down and we started, like, I try not to write my own bio because it's really hard when you write your bio. And when I was, in that space working on that with someone, I really wanted to be honest. And I feel like at my age now, I really don't care. I've worked in Congress. I've worked for 5 mayors. I've worked for the president of the city council. I'm an award-winning journalist. I've done all these things. And no, I don't have a college degree. And am I proud of that? Yes and no. Yes, because you got to know my story and you got to know where I came from and where I could have ended up at to be where I'm at today. So that's why I'm proud. The no part just comes because I always wanted to go to Spelman. I always wanted to have that, my different world experience, I wanted that, but I couldn't get it because at the time when I was emancipated from the system, I had to immediately take care of myself. I had to, and love my friends dearly, love them dearly. But I didn't want to end up on the couch watching Jerry Springer and the stories all day with 50 million children running around me, because I used the welfare system to take care of myself, just to, to take
you
care of
have
myself.
to be at the bottom. So, but
yeah,
all of that is reparations. Imagine holding the state of California accountable for foster care kids, making sure they can matriculate out of the system, but into a Spelman or into some sort of trade
that's
school.
important for now. But I also am like, look, take care of the kids, take care of the future generations. Do not overlook my generation.
I know
Do
that's
not
right.
overlook my parents' generation.
I know that's
when
right.
you talk about reparations, you cannot start from the future. We have to start with the folks that we have who are here right now. And that's one slight issue I have with a lot of the new policies and programs, even down to how we have programs that are only for families. And I'm
like, so the UBI, I was so mad at that city of LA UBI.
I can't qualify for this
right,
because I didn't have kids that I couldn't afford to take.
Meanwhile, somebody's 80-year-old granny who needs the assistance.
We have to take care of everyone. And I do feel like us single childless adults get the worst end of everything. And I don't like that. But going back to reparations, like, my generation, we're still the parents. We're also the grandparents. And some families, we the great grandparents. And so we should still be able to benefit as well, because we 100%. Suffered from it. We struggle. So for me, like, my issues are home ownership and education. I would love to be able to go back to college. I did go to college. I just didn't get my degree. I would love to be able to go back to college and pursue whatever I want to pursue, whether it's a law degree or whatever. So, and to me, that would be true reparations, because I'd be able to do that. Then I'd also be able to take that degree and make even more money, right? Or do whatever else I want with my life. But housing for me, I think, is at the top of the list, because that's what prohibits, that's what's killing our political power in the state. I feel like they're trying to push us out of the state with the high cost of living. And as long as we don't have paths, reasonable, attainable, affordable, real affordable paths to home ownership, that's going to continue to happen. If I get one more call, one more whatever from someone saying, I'm moving to Texas, I'm moving to Nevada, I'm moving to the Inland Empire, I'm leaving the country altogether. Like, it's like, I always say to those of us who have managed to stay in LA proper in particular, like, kudos to us.
It's not an easy thing to do. It's not. Yeah. And so I need you to give us a 1-minute wrap up, because we're at the last 2 minutes of the show, because we got a late start. We can't get deeper because I want to go deeper.
We can always do it again. A 1-minute wrap up is just, please know your zip code. And if you don't know what you're voting on, if you don't know about the judges, if you don't know about whatever, don't Jackson sound like a Black name. Don't be doing that. Find somebody you trust, that you believe looks out for whatever the issues and values are that you find important, and ask them. There are going to be plenty of voter guides floating their way around online, from newspapers to folks like me and other community folks. But please, like, you need to know what you're voting on all the way through, not just that last page, or second to last, I think it is on ours, where it says, who to vote for president. There's much more going on, and there's much more at stake than just the presidency. And I think for me, that's the most important message. And then to say, don't clock out, don't check out at 8:01. Okay, because the work is just starting after election day is over. And that's our problem. We check out. They expect us to check out, and we dutifully do so until 2 more years, and then another 2 years after that. And we have to stop doing that. That's why we're in the situation that we're in now, because we just completely check out.
What the beautiful Jasmyne Cannick said: stay engaged, be civically minded. This has been another episode of the Black Civics Collective. And so I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. Talking to you is always fun, and it's always a pleasure. You are going to have to come back on the other side of November 5th.
Of course, that's when the work starts. We'll gotta have a show.
First 100 days then.
Yeah, we got to have a show when the legislature reconvenes. We need, all of that, like all the things that are coming up that are going to be affecting us for sure.
I'm down. Thank you so much for being here, Jasmyne.
Thank you, and thank Dana Dane as well. Thanks for putting this together, because we don't even teach civics in I don't think in public school anymore. So this is amazing, and the time and effort you both put into this is really appreciated and much needed. And thank you so much.
All right. And just so we're gonna wrap up real quick, because we in fundraiser season. So if you have not donated to the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, make sure you go to NAASD.org, get that donation in here. We are trying to raise $50,000. It can be done. Tell your aunties, tell your brothers, tell your sister, tell a friend. $5, $10, you name it, we will receive it. Thank you so much. And then as a final mention, California Reparations new volunteer information going down with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, Wednesday, October 23rd and Thursday, October 24th. You can go to www.cjec official.org. And this has been another episode of the Black Civics Collective. Thank you all so much. Everybody have a good night, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you.